Is he going to run for governor? Attorney General Matt Denn is here. He'll talk about that and his battle against heroin in the state. This is the Delaware Way. Welcome to the Delaware Way. I'm Larry Menti. We are pleased to be joined by Attorney General Matt Denn, whose name has been in the papers a lot recently. Normally I don't start. First of all, thank you for being here.
My pleasure.
I appreciate that. Normally I don't start with politics, but I want to in this case, only because so many people, I read online, there's so many people that still would like to see you run for governor. Now, I know you just became Attorney General. Any interest in the job?
I'm planning on serving 4 years as the Attorney General. As you said, I just got the job, and I'm really privileged to have it, and we have a lot of things that we have to get done. So I'm planning on putting in 4 years. I've only got about 8 months in so far.
So there's no question you're not going to run for governor this time around?
Not planning to, no.
Okay. When you say planning to, it makes me...
I'm not running.
Okay. That's
I'm not trying to be coy.
That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
That's what I'm looking for. Joe Biden may jump in the race. You've had a couple of people come out already and say they endorse Joe Biden, even though he's not in the race. The governor has done so. Representative Carney has done so. How about you?
Oh, if Joe Biden runs for president, I'm for Joe Biden.
Would you like to see him run?
Sure.
I want to talk about the Terrence Fletcher case in Dover. It just was in the News Journal today that the NAACP is asking for a special prosecutor. They don't want the Dover police to handle it. They would rather your office not handle it. Any chance of there being a special prosecutor in that case?
We have an Office of Civil Rights and Public Trust that I just established in January that has investigators who work separately from the other investigators in our office, prosecutors who work separately from the other prosecutors in our office. They investigate all shootings that involve police officers, and they've been doing that since January. I think they've been doing a very good job with it, and that's who will be doing the investigation in this case as well.
We should point out that it was a case that this was last week. A 21-year-old black man was running from a police officer, was shot in the thigh. Immediately, the mayor of Dover came out and said that Fletcher was pointing a gun at the police officer. And then in court documents, there was nothing about a gun being pointed. So it seems like there was some conflicting statements in the case. I'm not going to ask you about the investigation because I know you can't comment on that. But the NAACP seems to feel strongly that because of conflicting statements, it may not even be conflicting, but because of some disparity in the two accounts, that they need somebody from out of state. They don't even trust anybody in Delaware. What's your answer to them?
Basically, the answer that I just gave you, which is, well, we're going to deal with it as we've done with other cases that involve police-involved shootings, which is different from the way they used to be handled, in that we do now have a separate office that operates separately from our criminal prosecutors. I think there was a concern in the past because you had investigators who were working side by side with police agencies day to day, also investigating the police-involved shootings, and likewise prosecutors who were involved with those agencies day to day making the prosecutorial decisions. Now we don't have that anymore. We have a separate unit in the office. I
want to talk about another News Journal article from earlier in the summer. After they came up with the budget and there were certain budget cuts, I think the word was incensed. I think that's the word they used in the News Journal, that you were incensed that certain things were cut to fight crime, especially in Wilmington, that you thought were imperative to have. Have you been able to work that out yet, and have we seen the effects of those cuts?
Well, we were very disappointed. We had made a very specific proposal to the General Assembly about how we thought that $36 million in legal settlement funds ought to be used to try to deal with the underlying causes of crime in our state, and they chose not to use the funds in that manner. About $6 million of the funds were spent on other things. About $30 million remain. So we were very disappointed that those funds weren't used in the way that we thought was appropriate. But there's $30 million that still remain to be spent, and there's another legislative session coming up. So we will again be making our case that things like treatment for substance abuse, reentry programs for inmates coming back into the community, education programs for high poverty elementary schools, after school programs for juveniles in high poverty areas, that these are areas where we ought to invest, along with additional investment for frontline law enforcement to really deal with the high violent crime rates that we've been seeing. So it's absolutely accurate to say that I was disappointed that the legislature didn't do what we proposed, but we've got another shot at it, and we're going to make the argument again.
Crime in Wilmington. I make the argument sometimes that it might be the #1 problem in the state, and because everything else seems to be connected to it. People they Google Wilmington or they Google Delaware, and they see these crime statistics, and the most dangerous city in America or Murder Town, USA. And it does seem like, and a lot of people have sat in that seat, it does seem like they've been getting resources, and it seems like they've been getting a lot of attention, and it seems like a lot of people care, and the problem still isn't fixed. Do you have a solution? Is there something that you can say isn't being done that should be done?
Sure, there are a lot of things that should be getting done, some of which I just mentioned in terms of dealing with the underlying causes of crime. But another thing that we need to see more of that we haven't seen enough of is frontline, visible law enforcement presence in some of the high crime areas. We actually had that for a while. Between March and early July, we had foot patrols that were paid for with some of these bank settlement funds out 6 p.m. to 1 a.m. every night in the city of Wilmington and high crime areas, a significant number of additional cars out as well. And during that time period, we actually saw the numbers moving in the right direction. And I was out with those officers several times and was able to see firsthand what kind of an impact it does have. So that's an area where we were doing the right thing for a while. It's tailed off because of resources, and I think it's very important that we get back to it, because it's not a cure-all, but I know, because we've seen it in Wilmington, we've seen it in a lot of other places around the country, having a very visible law enforcement presence in areas that have seen high rates of crime does deter some of the criminal activity. And if you combine that with the efforts that we think we need to make to deal with some of the underlying drivers of the crime, people looking to buy drugs, people coming back out of our prisons without adequate help to make sure that they are able to stay out of trouble, and the other issues I mentioned, I think we could have a real impact on those numbers.
When we return, I want to talk about something that's affiliated with what we're talking about, the heroin epidemic in the state of Delaware and your efforts to fight that when the Delaware Way continues.